You're listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for Deadly Uncle conversations.
All right, welcome to the Deadly Uncle Podcast. Today we have Mr. Thomas Martell. He's a community worker for the Red Deer Native Friendship Society, and that's not actually where I met Thomas. We've known each other for a few years. I played high school football against him, and I know we're both actually we're getting up there in age now. I'm not going to spill the beans, but on March 13th, I'm going to be 49. I'm not sure how old Thomas is, but that takes us back to our high school days. So welcome, Thomas. Why don't we start things out by you just telling us a little bit who you are and how you ended up doing community work for the Friendship Center.
Okay, thanks for having me, Trent. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm right behind you. I'm right behind you in age. So yeah, really, I'm just a member of the community. I'm a father, and a family member, right? A brother and a son. And because of my father's history with the residential school, of course, I wasn't taught growing up culture. I wasn't taught language. So when I saw an opportunity, an opening at the Friendship Center, to be honest, I didn't think I'd get it. But I applied anyway, and I went through a couple of different interviews, and I guess they liked what they heard, and so that was my introduction, I guess, into culture within the community inside the city, right? And it's been really good since then because I've had the opportunity to work with not only the Friendship Center and the people who participate in the events there, but within the indigenous community within Red Deer, which I've lived in for quite a while. So it's been really nice to kind of network and grow and evolve and see all the other people who I've met along the way, seeing them grow as well.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Now, you didn't, like you said, you grew up in Red Deer and you weren't raised around culture or anything. So where did after high school, how did you earn a living?
So after high school, I did a couple entry level odd jobs here and there, and then actually I was doing 3 jobs at once. One time I was doing security, I was working at a liquor store, and something else. And a friend of mine walked in one day, and he's like, "Oh, I never thought you'd be doing this." He's like, "Why don't you come to work with me tomorrow? You have to come tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I can't. I'm not the kind of guy that just drops a job and walks out, right? That's not me." And he's like, "Well, tell you what, you'll make more tomorrow than you'll make for the rest of the 2 weeks at all your jobs combined." So I quit my job that day.
You didn't need a gun to make this money, did you?
No. It was, I went to work in the oil field.
Okay.
Yeah, I did oil field. And so I stuck there for, I was there between 15 and 20 years.
Wow. So you did probably a ton of different jobs, and that we were talking before the podcast as well. And Kurt, I'll let you chime in here in a second. I keep jumping on these questions.
That's all good.
One of our last year's podcast guests was actually your cousin, Thomas Martell, and he actually lived his life as an oil field worker for much of his life before he started his healing journey. So you guys have kind of that in common, that oil field background. Is that maybe because of the Alberta thing, or is it just chance?
I think it's a bit of a combination of the both. Definitely Alberta. I mean, you don't have to look too far to get a job into the oil field there, especially 20 years ago. It was really booming there.
Yeah.
So, but being in Alberta and just by chance, a buddy of mine walked in that one day and he needed a guy the very next day. So that was my introduction.
And you said yes. That's the main thing. Like, that's a lot of things that people don't understand is once you start saying yes to things, doors open up for you. When you pull down those walls that we all have for ourselves, right? And once we just start to let things happen, good things do happen.
Absolutely. I had a lot of stress about it because, at the time I was with my son's mother. She had a couple of kids, so I had a small family, right? And I was really worried, and you look at yourself, can I do it? I had no idea what I was getting into. I knew it was hard work, but I did not know it was that difficult. The time that I started, it was hard work.
Yeah.
And so, but I just stuck it through. I stuck it out. I didn't have the cash up front to go buy all the good stuff that the oil field workers have. But a couple of weeks later, after my first check, I was able to go get myself the good gear. So
Yeah.
keep myself warm, and it was a little bit better after that, for sure.
Nice. Kurt, go ahead. If you got a
Wow,
question,
that's
chime in.
yeah. That's sounds like quite the journey that a lot of our young people or our young men that go up work up north go through. And I was just wondering, did you have any experience with indigenous culture, growing up, or what was your experience, when it comes to ceremonies, when it comes to powwow, when it comes to any of those things? How was your introduction to that?
So growing up, my dad and I, we'd always drive back to northern Saskatchewan, where our nation is, and we'd go visit family. And so I would hear about the ceremony, but I never attended. I would hear the language because they always spoke it there, but I was never taught. So every now and again, my dad would bring me to a powwow, and I could tell it was pulling on him, that he really wanted to attend those things, but it was difficult, right? Because of his experiences. I could see now, I didn't know it at the time, but now looking back, I could see the real challenges he had with exposing my sisters and myself to culture. And so I didn't have a whole bunch, but I sure wanted it. There was something, a spark just inside of me that was always there, always pulling me back to my identity, who I really was. So, my late dad, he left us probably 20. It'll be 29 years this year, and so after that, I really tried to look around for somebody to help me, teach me my history, my family, and the ceremonies and the culture, and that was a difficult thing, because you kind of have to be at the ceremony. You got to go. You have to experience those things. You can't, you can ask, but you don't get a whole bunch until you go. So it was difficult. And one of the first guys who give me his time and who talked to me, who listened to me, and who pointed me in the right direction was a local elder in the Red Deer community, Elder Lynn. He really helped me when I was really searching, and this was long before I applied at the Friendship Center, probably a good 8-9 years before that. I was still working oil field when I approached him. Yeah.
I grew up in Red Deer, similar to you, and I had my own experiences, so I don't want to talk for you, but what was it like for you growing up in Red Deer? Like, there was not a lot of Indigenous people in Red Deer when we grew up. I know that I faced a lot of racism when I played on sports teams, and just in general, even though I am fair-skinned, like, people knew who I was. They knew who my dad was, and I got some negative stuff from it. Definitely, there was definitely people that were cool as well growing up, but I was made aware that I was different when I grew up in Red Deer.
That's for certain. So believe it or not, I know you can't tell by looking at me now, but I used to have really long hair. I've since shaved it off, but most of my life I had really long hair. And so it was a lot easier to tell that I was Indigenous, right? And by the way, that's not why I'm bald today. I just can't grow as much. But, I did experience that too, Trent. There were several times where it was pointed out in one way or another that I was different. And it's something that, honestly, it drove me. It drove me to not allow people to sit there and judge me, to look at me any differently, because I'm capable to do whatever they do. Whatever they're doing, I can do that. And so I really pushed hard to try to prove that. And, it's, even in high school, when I played high school football, like you said, I believe 2 years out of the 3 that I played, we were undefeated. Just saying. But
We must have played at different times, because I thought I was undefeated too. So I don't know. And
Actually,
maybe that's
probably
just a
worse.
story we tell to everybody, right?
That's right. But no, when I was a senior in high school, I think I was 6'3", 260 pounds, and I was in the gym 5-6 days a week. Right.
Yeah.
I was looking to. I put that anger into positive things
Yeah.
for a while. For a while, I definitely had my drop in motivation and inspiration. I think all people have that, when we just experience overwhelming odds. But I did bounce back, and I did come back from it. I never completely face planted. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the sorry, my brain is just kicking back in with the coffee. But we worked together at the Friendship Center in Red Deer. I worked there for a brief period of time when my dad first got sick. I came home for a while, and I worked as a with the housing team there. And you got hired on at the Friendship Center, and I don't really know what your position is, but the best way I can describe it is you're like a community helper. You go around and you, when I was there anyways, you were helping with some of the elders, you were doing, helping with some of the ceremonies, that type of thing. How has that job changed your life?
You know, I think it's changed my life in quite a big way because of the people I've met, because of the things that I've learned. The medicine wheel has always been a special, iconic, um, you know, piece for me to look at and kind of organize my life around since I've come into culture. And so being around the people who perform ceremonies or just even attend ceremonies, seeing what it's like, what the people are like, it's really motivated me and inspired me to continue to look at human beings like human beings. No matter who they are, where they come from, what their belief is, they're no different than me. I see more in common with other people than I do differences, and I think that could be summed up right there and how it's changed my life. If you're on the bus or on the subway or something, you look across from you and you see somebody from across the world, and you think how their life might be so different. That's how I used to think. Now I see that person and I think we're just the same. They deal with the same crap when they go home that I do, right? We all got to struggle to make sure we've got our bills paid and our kids are looked after and all the things. So I see that we've got more in common. When I see the stress on someone's face of a stranger, I think of how they might be dealing with things that I am. And so I might approach them with a kind word just to help uplift them a little bit. But so I used to do work with a lot of elders and communities. So now I'm a cultural helper still,
Okay, there we
and I
go.
always will be. I always will be, I think. But I've also moved into a little bit of a different role because I really love working with the youth. So I'm mentoring youth now, and that's really been rewarding because those youths are our future for sure. And I know that there's somebody out there, there's youth out there feeling just the same way I was when I was young, wanting to know where they come from, who they are, and how do I get involved with culture. So now I can help bridge those gaps. I wish somebody was there at a younger age for me, and so all I can do now is try to be there for somebody else.
Yeah. No, I can attest to that. There wasn't a lot of culture going on in the Red Deer area for people our age, anyways, back in those days.
Yeah.
That's amazing work. Have you been involved in helping like actually build the sweats from the ground up? And how important do you think it is for the younger generation to actually not just attend the sweats or not just attend the ceremonies, but be there right from the beginning, helping build them up?
So yes, I have. Elder John has kind of taken me under his wing a little bit and has been helping teach me over the last few years. And so I've had the privilege to be able to go out and assist him and help him from the ground up, building the sweat lodge, preparing everything, and then helping all through the ceremony until, first one to get there, last one to leave kind of thing. And I think that's vital for young people who want to get involved in ceremony and in culture, because there is so much learning with every single step of the way. There's so much connection with every piece of the lodge that we put together. And there's just so much to be absorbed, so much to be learned. Uh, but outside of this ceremony, also it's the connection with the other human beings that you're working with, that you're helping with, and because it's ceremony, there's just that little bit extra shine in every single person that's there. So I think that's a big part of it, for sure.
Do
Yeah.
you think it's important, for, our especially our boys to be a part of these programs? And when you were growing up as a young boy, you said that it's something that you were looking for. Did you, growing up, see any programs that were available, that would have led you to your culture?
At that time, I didn't know of much, to be honest, and I was actively looking for it. So I don't think there was, when I was growing up, there really wasn't much there, and if there was, it must have been kept kind of, secret, because I couldn't find it. But I'm so glad that now, when I look around, and especially with the help of the internet and social media, there's so much going on all the time. There's always something to be a part of, whether it is going to ceremony, some sort of a feast or a powwow, a round dance. There's lots of stuff happening all the time. But not only that, not only ceremony, there's lots of programs for kids to just attend, to be a part of a group of people who look like them, or maybe they don't look like them. They're like them. If you're a 14, 15-year-old boy from Switzerland or Japan or China, you're the same as a 15-year-old boy from here in Canada. And it's the teachings that I've received, that I've learned with culture and ceremony, are universal, absolutely universal.
That's
I
amazing. One more, Trent. One more. Sorry to
Yeah,
cut
no,
you
do
off.
your
Just
thing. Do your thing.
one more. Have you, like myself, growing up in Mokensis, in Calgary, have you had any exposure to the Blackfoot ways of being? Because myself, I'm from Treaty 4, so I really didn't have that as an option for myself to learn any of the ways from my homeland. But I was lucky enough that the Blackfoot community opened their arms and brought me to some of their ceremonies, and even actually gave me one of their names, Mokinsis, which means singer. But have you been exposed to any of the Blackfoot side of the culture?
Um, I can't say I've been exposed to much Blackfoot culture. However, I have met a few pretty incredible Blackfoot individuals, who have we've talked, and they've told me a little bit about where they come from, and just little differences.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in Calgary, and so there was I met quite a few people there, who were Blackfoot. So I haven't been exposed to culture, although I'm really interested to learn. I like looking, every Stampede season I go down, and I see it's usually all Blackfoot teepees that I see up there, which I think they get the award. Blackfoot people get the award for the nicest one. They're big and beautiful, those teepees, right? But
Yes.
I think I have a brother who's quite a bit older than me, who I've never met, who I have been trying to chase down, and I believe, as far as I've gotten, he lives amongst the Blackfoot community because his mother's side is Blackfoot, and so I'm still searching for him. He's got to be about almost 20 years older than me,
Well,
and
what's
I'm
his
still
name?
looking for him.
Maybe somebody will watch this podcast that knows him and they can connect you guys. What's his name?
His name is Frank.
Okay.
Uh, that was my dad's name, and so my dad and his girlfriend, they were really young when they had Frank, and so I guess he was taken with mom's Muslim and Kukum, and so that's where he lived out his days. And I don't know if he ever met my father or
Okay.
his father. So the last place that I can trace him to is a place called Gleason.
Okay, yeah,
Ah.
that's right by Sixaga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be investigating a little more to see if I can find him. All I know is his name is Frank, and he played hockey as a youngster. I guess
Okay.
my dad would go and watch him play, but could never talk to him or tell him who he was. So,
Mm.
unfortunate little bit of history there, but I might have a Blackfoot brother.
So Thomas, you said your dad went to residential school now, and he seemed to always be longing for that reconnection. You said to culture and things like that. Now, did your dad struggle at all after residential school? Was that something that he had to deal with, and is that why you think maybe you weren't exposed to the culture at a young age?
I think that's directly the culprit. Absolutely, because he did have a very difficult time. He didn't talk too much about what happened there. Um, I remember little bits from when I was younger, but I was a little kid, right? He didn't want to explain those things to me. But I know that in order to be successful, I need to be a white man. I heard those words come from his lips. So, he made sure that my sisters and I were baptized, that we went to Catholic school, and that we kind of he didn't teach us language, and he didn't teach us culture, and it wasn't because of it wasn't his fault that he didn't teach us. I know now why he didn't teach us, and he did struggle. He had a very difficult time. So after he got out of residential school, he was he was away from his family. I come from a large family, so a lot of uncles, aunties, and uncles,
Yeah.
and so they all got moved around all over the place, and so they lost touch, a lot of them. And of course, like so many, unfortunately, there was a little bit of he got into the alcoholism after he got away from the residential school. But one thing I admire my father for, and I always will, he was always a really good man. And so when my oldest sister came along, the day she was born, he never let a drop of alcohol touch his lips again. And I admire him for that. So he was a father first and foremost. He always looked after us. And I could see the struggle within him, wanting to go back to culture. He loved going back to the res every year. Him and I, we'd do a road trip, boys road trip, and we'd go stay with family. We'd be gone for a week to 2 weeks and then drive back. And those were the best of times. Absolutely. We had so much fun. And I could see his heart sing while we were there. He just loved being amongst the people and speaking his language.
Yeah. Well, it's
know.
amazing that you were, able to see him in that environment too, because that's what I think a lot of us that are, we're all healing in the indigenous community, and a lot of us have issues with how our parents were. And what I always try to say to people is like, we have to remember what, our parents and grandparents went through, and they all did the best that they could with the tools that they had at the time. And, a lot of them struggled. Have relatives that struggled and watched them struggle through life, but it's about understanding and having that compassion, and kind of the same thing that you said when you started working at the Friendship Center, Tom, is that you started to realize, see how much you had in common with people more than how much differences there were. Because once we start to recognize our similarities in other cultures and other people that are struggling, and realize that it's all just a human experience, and that we're all just doing the best we can at any given time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I try to remember that each and every single day. That we are all, every single person, no matter how good people make it seem that they're doing, we all struggle with a little bit of something. We might be pushing it down or hiding it, right? But if we all just treat each other a little bit better, what a difference we can make in the world, right? And I think about, like you were saying, Trent, our parents, our grandparents, and their parents before them, leading back to our ancestors, they all struggled. They all sacrificed. They sacrificed so that we could be here. Yeah. We have an obligation to make them proud, and to do the things that they would teach us, and that they are trying to teach us from the other side, I believe. So I believe that I have an obligation to show them that I appreciate their sacrifice, and by helping other people in the world. That's the only way I know how, is to make my life of use, of value to other people. to do for other people what's been done for me.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
people. Oh, go ahead, Kurt. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, that's amazing, and I was just gonna say, like, how important do you think it is, for men to be in the positions you are, like men to be in the positions of community work, and for young boys to see men in these positions.
Kurt, that is a really good question. And it's so important because if you could see, and Trent knows where I work, the ratio of female energy to male energy, right? There's not a whole bunch of men who get into this type of work. And I kind of, it was by chance really that I got in. And I'm so glad that I did. But I think it's very, very important. It's important for our young boys and girls to see, uh, men in a position where they don't feel they have to. Like, could I go out and do a labor job and make more money? Absolutely, I could. I've done that. But this is, to me, more important, right? We have to show our young men how to respect women, um, because there are some who have not been shown, who have not been taught. They need to learn these things. So they need to see men, in a position where they're helpful, not drill sergeant, but approachable. We're still nurturing, but we're still masculine. It's so important. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a conversation that so many people have too during all the talks about healing and stuff. People are always talking about toxic masculinity, and there's definitely examples of toxic masculinity out there, but I think people still need positive masculinity. Like these kids need to see men being men, but still being able to be helpers as well too. Still being, conscious of the overall community, because that's our way as Indigenous people, is taking care of each other and taking care of the ones around us. So I think somewhere along the line during colonization, we lost that somewhere, that sense of community and how we all take care of each other, because we didn't have homeless people before. We didn't have our people suffering as much before because we took care of each other. We had the tools to do that, and now we have to relearn those tools, which a lot of us are doing, but it's a long road, right? There's so many years of trauma and hurt and everything in our community that we have to get over, that we got to understand and teach our young men that there is positive masculinity.
Absolutely. And there's so much pressure on men in this day and age and in our society to, of course, be the provider. But there's a race. Everybody wants the biggest truck. They want the biggest house. They want the nicest car, right? There's a race to be able to provide all of those things. Those aren't important things. I mean, you got to have a home to live in, sure, but you don't need $1 million mansion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I still continue to look at the wolf and how he teaches us humility. You look at a wolf pack, they put their oldest and their most sick in the front. That's who sets the pace, not the alpha male, right? He looks out for his group. To me, that's positive masculinity. You're looking out for and protecting your family, providing them, making sure that they have what they need. But this race and all these commercials that show us on TV what we need to be successful, that's all wrong. It's all wrong. That's all money driven, right?
Yeah, I agree. I grew up we didn't have a lot for sure, and my dad was a musician. He did something that he loved, and he showed that to me, that it's more important to find something in life that is meaningful to you than to chase money, because money is here today and gone tomorrow, and it's never going to fix your problems. It's only going to create more problems. So you're better off to find something that you love, something that you can put all your creative energy into, and then if it's meant to be for you to have those other things, they'll find you along the way.
That's, absolutely true. And I stopped chasing money quite some time ago because I chased it for a while. I worked hard. And, so I was working oil field when my son was born. He's 22 years of age now. So when he was born, I was already out in the field for quite some time. But the first 6-7 years of his life, I was gone. I was working. I was away 30 days a month. I'd come home for 4 or 5 days, then I'd go back out for 28 to 30 days. I was gone for like, 6 or 7 years. When he was born, I was here. The first year of his life, I took with him. But there's so much of it. And so I look, well, they got to pay you well. Yeah, they got to compensate you to be away from your family. And then I start to think, well, how much money, how much can you compensate me to separate me from my family?
Yeah.
And especially the oil field, which I never, I was good at some of the things there. I made some good money and I enjoyed some of the guys, but I never really respected what I did, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't want to chase money anymore. Money, like you said, it'll come. When you're doing what you love, the things you need, they come to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. There's a difference.
Yeah. No, and when you think about, a lot of those camps, you hear a lot of the rumors about the addictions and stuff that can go along with it, as well as, bringing that certain type of energy to a community as well, on the days off. And, do you think that that's something that affects communities is having, a camp full of, men that are kind of missing their families and looking for something to do that time?
That can definitely be a hazard. That's for sure. I mean, I stayed in many different camps and hotels and worked with a ton of different crews. And, there's a lot of good, hardworking fathers and husbands out there. But there's a lot of guys working out there who just want to, they want to party and stay kids forever. They go out and get all these toys on credit, right? It's all on loan, all their trucks and quads and boats and houses. So as soon as they run out of work for 2 months, they're giving their keys back for everything. And now what? Right? That doesn't teach anything. That doesn't teach anything.
Yeah.
But and with following with that is the addictions, right? There are the drugs and alcohol that you see because you're away from everything sometimes.
Yeah.
And the some of the boys over there, they just want to party, and that can bring a whole new sickness into the mix.
Well, I grew up around a lot of oil field workers in Red Deer, and I know exactly what you mean about the party. Like they'd come back and then, they'd party the whole time they were here. And this is something that I heard and I experienced obviously as well, because I'm not afraid to talk about my past experiences with drugs. But most of the guys that I knew that were working oil fields said they preferred to do cocaine rather than say weed, because they had to take a drug test when they got back to work and cocaine was out of their system in 72 hours and weed stuck around for 30 days or whatever it is. So then now you've got all these people that are partying. The cocaine keeps the party going while they're there. Then they got to go to work and then, detox for the first few days that they go back to work. So the job sites can't be the safest either. If you're just a hardworking dad there doing your thing and you're dealing with guys that are caught up in not only in addiction, but making thousands of dollars, a week, so they can afford their addiction too. It's got to be kind of a tough balancing act as somebody that's working on job sites like that.
Yeah, it can be. And, I really paid close attention. I never got into that really when I worked out there because, it just wasn't my personality, I guess. But I never judged others. I just paid close attention because I did see a lot of guys get hurt out there.
Yeah.
And I did see a lot of guys make mistakes because they were either under the influence or, like you said, they're, trying to recover from all the crap they did on their days off. It was when we went for days off and we'd come back to work, if we were working with other crews and services, I definitely had an eye over my shoulder for the first week because it took a while for guys to get back into the swing of things and sweat it out,
Yeah, and I think
there was only my whole time. There was only one time I asked to be moved off a crew to another one because I just couldn't deal with it.
Yeah.
I
think we should say though, like we shouldn't attack the oil field industry that much because it's come a long way. Like I remember my dad saying in the 70s when he was working bars in the early 80s when the huge oil boom was having, safety came a long way from then, because he was saying like he'd be playing bars and guys would be loading up their trucks with beer to go on site and do the night shift on a drilling rig or whatever, right? So that's kind of stuff definitely isn't happening probably anymore, but there's still, people still struggle with addiction, and when you mix that access to money with addiction, it can be a tricky situation for sure.
Oh yeah, and actually, my very best friend, he still works oil field. He got into it a few years before I did, and he's still going hard. He's my best friend for a reason. He's like my brother because he's a family man. He's a father. He takes his responsibilities very, very seriously, and so there are a lot of guys like him that do that job because that's the job he's always done. He can't go anywhere and make that kind of money now anywhere else. He'd have to go back to school for a little while.
Yeah.
So he's stuck in it, but he's a hardworking guy, and I admire him for it. He makes sure his family's provided for. He goes and gathers and hunts the way he knows how.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty. Yeah, when you think about those things, at the same time as well, you were saying that there is some hardworking and good straight people that are also working out there just looking to build something for their families. So it is something that we look at, and that's why we have this podcast, because I think it's important, for men to have a safe space to have these conversations and, talk about, being vulnerable, talk about, our addictions, and then also talk about our healing journey as well. And so, do you find that, being in the community, have you seen, a change within our men and within our community since you've been, doing your thing with your job there?
So I have met some guys who have, I guess, maybe just were on the cusp of their healing journey, just kind of walking out from the shadows into the sunshine, if you could say. And so this was like 3-4 years ago, and being able to see them attend programs, attend the ceremonies, some of the same things that I go to, seeing them at the powwow. I think there have been some men that have come a long way. They look back, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to change the way I am. And so they're moving forward in a good way. And they're moving forward to be healthy pillars in the community, because we need those. We need those warriors, right? And they truly are. I would trust some of these guys, and I'd stand right next to them in any battle. These guys they've got really good hearts. They just had some struggles like we all do as human beings, and they had some difficult times, but are coming out. So I don't want to say any names of these guys, but I think they inspire me, and they keep me trucking forward, just seeing the success that they've had in such a short amount of time, right? And how they're able to affect the immediate community around them, how they're able to affect it in a positive way when they bring that positive energy. And you get like 5, 6, you guys know, you get a bunch of guys in a room who are, moving in a healthy direction. There's just a roar of laughter for a good 45 minutes to an hour before anything can get done,
Well, laughter is the best medicine.
Absolutely.
Well, I wanted to ask you one more thing, because you kind of you explained that you came across this job with the Friendship Center in Red Deer kind of by chance. You just thought you'd do it, and it was a step away from what you normally did, where you made money in the oil field, so you took a step down in, say, salary to take this job. Was there an aha moment for you when you were there doing your job that was like, you were like, this is where I'm meant to be, and this is where I just know that I found the right place for me?
I think I could say that moment, there's been several of those moments, and each time I look into the eyes of somebody who I've made a positive difference with, every single time that moment reoccurs for me. every single time. Yeah. So when I'm working with the elders and I go help, something simple, mowing a lawn or shoveling a sidewalk, or maybe I run to the pharmacy for them because they can't, you know, little things like that just make such a big difference to somebody's life.
Yeah.
I just actually got back. I took a group of youth up to Jasper for 4 days. We did like a little mini culture camp, and all of the laughs and the giggles I heard the whole time just recharged me so much, made my heart feel so good that I took a group of kids that didn't know each other. And by the end of it, I truly believe some lifelong friendships have begun, have started. So just spending those 4 days making memories and making a difference in people's lives, that's the moment for me. That's the juice for me. I don't care about the money, as
Yeah.
long as I got a place to hang my hat, I'm good. I'm good.
That sounds that's a
How
really good outlook to have for sure.
how important is it? Do you think for healing to have culture involved?
I know for me it was vital, and so I think for so many others it's it's important, a must have. It's it's who we are. There's just, I said it earlier, something burning inside of me. It's always been there, and it pulls on me. It pulls me to where when I'm in ceremony, then it stops. Then it's like, you are where you're supposed to be, you know. And the ceremonies and the culture, it works. When you have people teaching you the right way, it really, really works, and it makes you want to continue and strive to go further. And what I mean by teaching you the right way, so you got some teachers who are pretty old school and pretty strict. I personally believe that strictness comes from the church and from a colonial point of view. Because if you look at our traditional ways, it was with laughter. You get a bunch of indigenous people together in ceremony. Usually there's a whole bunch of laughter. You have some dark humor in there. You guys know what I mean. And it's always there, right? So when you get somebody who, if you make a mistake in ceremony because you're learning and you don't know, um, I would just ask anybody who's hearing or seeing this, don't try to humiliate or embarrass the helpers. Um, Encourage them. Don't 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 come at them too heavy-handed when they're making a mistake, because they're still learning, and they may have been told something different from somebody else. So I would just say, try to teach with an encouraging, loving, warm, welcoming way, rather than an angry, no, don't do that, do it this way. Don't do that, because it discourages people you
Yeah.
know
Well, Thomas, I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. We're slowly running out of time here. I got one more question for you before we let you go. And I just think all the work you're doing for people in the community, now the youth in Red Deer, it's really important work, and we got to say that you're definitely one of our deadly uncles. But my question for you is, because you were always longing for that culture. Like, you grew up and you said you were always looking for that. And that's what a lot of people that grow up in the city away from their culture, they feel that need to reconnect with culture, and maybe they don't know the right way to approach somebody, and some of them never do, because they feel like people are going to turn them away or do exactly what you said, where when they're teaching, get mad at them or whatever. What advice would you give somebody that's trying to reconnect to culture? What's the best advice to get them going, to make those steps forward? Because a lot of them are just afraid because they don't know the best way to go forward and ask for that introduction.
So I had that same problem when I was looking. I didn't know how. I didn't know anything really about protocol, so I didn't know about how to ask elders, or which elders to ask, or which person is an elder. I didn't know any of these things, right? So I think one of the best ways you could do it is approach any indigenous organization within your community and just go ask. Ask to be a part of anything they got going on. And if whenever you do have the time and you've got the availability, take part in anything that you can. Because what's going to happen is you're going to start making those little connections. You're going to start seeing the same people at different events, and you're going to create friendships. You're going to create relationships. You're going to start hearing about more events, more ceremony, more culture that's taking place. So it's just getting that start. So go to any friendship center. I know in Red Deer, there's UAVS is there, the Métis local, Shining Mountain. There's a bunch of places, right? And I'm sure there's lots in Calgary, Edmonton, all over. There's lots of friendship centers, though. That is one start. But just go to any organization and just ask, and continue to ask. If you don't get the answer that you want from the first person, go back another day and ask another person. And because everybody has a bad day, maybe somebody just can't give you the information you want at the time. Don't let that dissuade you. Keep going. Keep asking. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That's great advice for everybody out there listening. And just thank you for sharing a little bit of what you do with us. And, just your time is such a valuable asset that, a lot of people don't always value. But thank you for your time as well.
Hey, Thomas.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate being here, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing. You guys are doing an amazing job.
Well, you are a deadly uncle.
You're listening to the Deadly Uncle Podcast,
a safe space for Deadly Uncle conversations.
Next week on the Deadly Uncle Podcast.
And I went there, and I was scared, and I didn't know what to expect. And we just lost Albert like a couple years before that. I wish I would have met him. Anyway, it was Rick that was running it, and the lodge closed, and that rattle came to life. And